transmissibility than COVID-19 and the few cases around the world. That was the news in 90 seconds. Now guys, before we get into our conversation today, I just want to read the latest COVID-19 update for you. Within the past 24 hours, there are 13 new cases. Current hospitalization stands at 10. There are total active cases of 552, total recovered 8,652, and the total deaths remains at 268. Now, as we talk about monkeypox, a lot of persons are worried, and we are entitled to have that concern because we are now coming out of a pandemic. And when you're looking at the stories and you're hearing about the situations across the world, you are wondering, okay, when are we going to get this in TNT? So to kind of bring some relief to that concern that we have, we are going to be chatting with the Secretary of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Dr. Faith B. Israel. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Tobago.
Good morning and thanks for having me. And yes, the aim of this morning is to chat about this monkeypox. I know we got up last week and thought, oh God, not something else. So no, the aim today really is to chat about it, for us to just learn a little bit more about it so that we can alleviate those fears, so that we can indicate what you really need to look for just in case we do have to treat with it, and so that we could be educated.
So first of all, could you explain what exactly is monkeypox?
Certainly. So monkeypox is actually a disease that you get from a virus that was discovered in the 1950s, late 1950s. They discovered this virus primarily in monkeys, hence the name monkeypox. Okay. So we're not going to go into the scientific name of the virus and all of that. The thing that is, though, the disease looks like, the good thing about the disease compared to COVID is that when you get the disease, you initially start with feeling tired and having a fever and so forth. But the end part of the disease includes you having rash. A rash that actually you see. It looks like boils on your skin. Now that makes it actually a good thing because at least you can see there's a rash. Okay. Most people with COVID, there is nothing to see. And the way it is transmitted, it is the liquid that actually comes out of the pus from the rash, or if you have, the liquid that comes out of your nose and your mouth and so forth. But you have to kind of be a little way into the infection for that to be transmitted. So you have to actually physically touch somebody else and have that liquid, have that pus from your hand or your nose or your eyes, touch that other person. Now the other way to do it is if, let's say, you're lying in a bed and the pus run off on the bed and then somebody else comes and lies down on the bed, kind of thing. But in many instances we're not really doing that, which is why they were saying last week that we don't need to be too concerned, because it's not like COVID. If I sneeze, it goes over to you over there and so forth. The monkeypox is not transmitted that way, and that is why we are not as concerned about it as we were with COVID, as we still are with COVID.
So you mentioned physical contact, right? And while I was doing some research with the monkeypox, one of the things that I saw is that persons were asking, can I get this virus through sexual contact?
So the thing about sexual contact is that you are, hopefully if you're having sex, you are actually touching the other person. So that is where the sexual contact comes in. So it's not a sexually transmitted infection the way we think of, like herpes and HIV and that kind of thing. But because you are in close physical contact with the person you are having sex with, then yes, you can get it while having sex. But by the way, that also applies to COVID as well. Because remember, you're in close contact, your mouth closed, your face closed. So it's the same kind of thing. But yes, because you are physically close to the person, you might be rubbing skin and so forth, makes it one of those things that you can transmit while having sex.
So apart from the things that you can see, what other symptoms are associated with the monkeypox? So
let me pull it up just to make sure I'm not giving any inaccurate information. Okay. So you have headaches, right? Fever, onset of fever, swollen lymph nodes, lymph nodes under your thing, under your arms and that kind of thing. Muscle and body pains. Now all of this sounds very familiar, right?
Yes.
Back pain, all of this sounds still very familiar. Profound weakness, very, very familiar. The other thing that you would see after all of that is the lesions on your skin, the pox on your skin. The way you test it though is to see, you actually do a PCR test, the same PCR test that we talk about for COVID-19. You can do a PCR test, but they look specifically for that virus when you're doing the PCR test. So that is how we really confirm that you have monkeypox. Of course, if you cannot do the PCR test because you may be in a situation in a country where you don't have access to that, then they look at, do you have all of these symptoms that we just looked at, and then you have all of those things on your skin, then they say, okay, you're a suspected case, we are going to treat you as if we know you have monkeypox.
Is there any situation at all where you may have the symptoms and not exactly the lesions, and there is something that can be prevented, done to prevent the lesions from coming up on your body?
Once you get the infection, but you know, it's like everything else. There are some people, for example, who get COVID and have very mild symptoms, and there are some people who get COVID and end up dying, unfortunately. Yeah. The same thing applies to monkeypox. Some people get very small, tiny lesions. Some people, it's really, really bad. It's actually a disease that can kill you, though. It is not as it is what we've seen in the areas where it is endemic, in the areas where it is very, very common, and these are mainly some West and Central African countries. You see that with one strain of it, and I'm using the word strain very loosely, in one strain of it, up to 1 to 3% of the people who get it actually die. In another strain, up to 10% of the people who get it die. But we have to take into consideration that these may actually be because of the circumstance of that population, where the individuals are in an area that is poor. Healthcare is not necessarily the greatest thing. So when we look at larger populations, or populations like us, where we have access to healthcare, have access to that kind of stuff, I don't envision that if we get it, which I'm hoping we don't, that if we get it, that we will have to be too concerned about death, because our healthcare system is pretty decent in the western side of the world.
How long do these lesions or symptoms usually last for?
So for some people it goes away in a couple weeks. It's fine. And that, by the way, that's the other thing that they tell you. You're usually not infectious when the lesions actually dry up. You know, when you say you have an old scab, so and the scab fall off, so that is the point where you know you are no longer infectious anymore. And that, again, it goes back to different individuals. That can take a couple weeks. For some people it takes a little bit longer if you have other health issues and so forth, but within a couple weeks you should be fine.
Okay, so we have a lot more to discuss, but unfortunately we have to go to a short break right now, so we'll be right back after the break.
Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, buljoil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meats served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules, or if you are having a cooking day off. Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. We are continuing our conversations with the Dr. Faith B. Israel on the issue of monkeypox and how concerned should we be. Now, before we went to a break, Dr. Faith B. Israel, she was telling us some of the symptoms that one could look for to identify if you do have monkeypox. Now, don't be alarmed, it hasn't reached Trinidad and Tobago as yet, and we're praying to God it stays that way, because we have just come from a pandemic and we don't want to go back into a situation where there are more deaths on our hands. So as we continue our conversations, could you tell us some of the countries that monkeypox has been identified in? Sure,
and this is why this is a concern, because they recognize that there are places where monkeypox is a normal part of their life. So there are some of these West African countries, Cameroon, Congo, and so forth. Monkeypox is considered as endemic in those areas. But over the last couple of weeks, there are a couple other countries, and let me list the countries, and this is important. There are a few cases. There are about between 90 and 100 cases outside of the areas where we normally have monkeypox, and those countries are Australia, Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and United States of America.
And when we hear United States of America, it's a very touchy, because then
it seems like it's right there.
Yeah.
But the good thing about that is that it's only 1 to 5 cases so far they've seen in the United States of America. And because this is now something that we are looking for, we know that the health professionals are keeping an eye open for it. Now, it seems like as of today or yesterday, Belgium may have been the only country that has started implementing quarantine. So as soon as we know that you have this, isolation, stick you in an area, separate from everywhere else, start doing contact tracing, ensuring that everybody else around you who've been around you for the last couple of days, they are in quarantine. Belgium is the only country that has started doing this so far, and we would envision that other countries would probably start doing it, because what we recognize is that there seems to not have been no travel history in some of these areas with the countries that we know have monkeypox. So that is what is a little concerning to people.
So then how is it spreaded?
So that is the thing. So it means that there may have been, the situation, there may have been, COVID most of the COVID restrictions are lifting. Most people are traveling now. You may have had one person who traveled, came over, didn't really think about it, may not have had severe thing, and then infected somebody else. So that person may have been the person they picked up and not necessarily the person who actually did the traveling.
Yes.
So it is that kind of investigation that is happening now to determine where these 100 or so people got monkeypox from.
So as of right now, the treatment plan, well, as you say, for one country is quarantining. There is no vaccine, no type of medication that they can really give persons to make it go away. So remember, this is a virus, and the thing about dealing with a virus is that the virus itself is pretty difficult to fight against. That is why it took us a while to get, antiretrovirals for HIV and that kind of stuff. So what we've been doing is the same way with COVID. We've been treating the symptoms, and the same thing in essence is happening with these cases where they're treating the symptoms. In some areas there are antiviral medications that they take, but that is not a worldwide thing. Now that is different to vaccines though, because there is actually a vaccine that was created in 2019 or so that is able to prevent both smallpox and monkeypox, but of course that isn't something that is part of a worldwide vaccination program, because we didn't have to worry about those things. Remember when we had a chickenpox way back when, and we actually had a worldwide vaccination program against chickenpox many years ago. These are people who are 30, 40, 50 years ago is when they were giving those kinds of chickenpox vaccines, but that has not happened for a while because we have not had to think about chickenpox
monkeypox for a little
Precisely.
bit. So now that we have this monkeypox thing coming up, and we had the vaccine available from 2018, 2019, we now have to look at it, check to see how many people are actually getting infected, and then countries would then have to decide whether that vaccine is something we want to roll out in the country the same way we were rolling out the COVID-19 vaccines.
Because I remember in primary school, I got chickenpox from another student, and it was terrible. I think I still have a mark on my face here from chickenpox. And because I live with my parents and sisters, you know, everybody else by default got infected. The thing about it, they didn't have any, because I had the
lesions,
yes,
yeah,
that came up on my skin that were itching. I don't think my mom or anybody else had it as severe as me, because my skin is very sensitive. So anything that is not familiar with it, it reacts badly. And
your parents may have actually been vaccinated back then, even though you may not have been vaccinated. So that may be why their response to it may not have been as severe as your response to it.
Could be. That is right. So for me, when I hear monkeypox, it actually brings back some harsh memories for me, because I know how terrified and how uncomfortable it was when I had chickenpox. Now, in terms of preventative measures, now the country has opened back out, and people are very excited about traveling again. And sometimes when we realize that, okay, we could go from country to country, we sometimes forget that COVID-19 is still rampant. So with this new monkeypox, how can persons traveling protect themselves and prevent the possibility of monkeypox coming to Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, so you just have to be vigilant. You have to look at yourself. Remember, we spoke about the fever, we spoke about the feeling very tired, the muscle pain and so forth. Of course, that sounds very much like a typical flu. It does sound very much like a typical flu. But if after, if that happens, and then you recognize, you start seeing one little on your hand, then you need to say, okay, let me check that out, because that could be the monkeypox, that could be the rash coming up. So if you have a rash that you cannot figure out where that rash is coming from, that is a sign that you need to contact the health professionals, that you need to not just stay home and deal with this at home. Because if we identify the individual case and we do the isolation, then we can prevent it from spreading uncontrollably. So that is what you have to look for. If you see anybody out there who look like they have little rash on their skin, be very, I mean, we're not trying to discriminate, but be very, very conscious of the fact that monkeypox is out there now, and that little rash is something that we need to be concerned about.
And I feel like, it may seem a bit harsh, but I think in times like this, we could be your brother's keeper. So it's the same thing with COVID-19, right? There are some persons who should have been on quarantine, or it have persons who, let's say, was told that they tested positive, and because they didn't have any real symptoms like other persons, they were still living their life like normal. So I would hope that if we see somebody who may have the little rash, as you say, it may seem a bit harsh, and they may say, but I'm fine, but we want to prevent a situation from, we just had a pandemic, and it was so hard for 2 years, especially economically, with a lot of businesses being closed and a lot of people struggling and crying every day. We don't want to go back in a situation where we're saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Now, can monkeypox be spread? You spoke about the physical contact, but can we get it from dead animals?
So the thing about monkeypox is that it is actually, the virus is called a zoonosis, meaning it is a virus that can go from animals to humans. So that is a very good question. It says, we say monkeypox because it was found in monkeys, but it can actually also be found in other rodents. So rats, you can also get it from rats and that kind of thing. So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to treating with rodents around, because yes, it can jump from an animal to our thing. Although they seem to not have any cases, we're talking about cases where people probably eat the dead animal and that kind of thing. We are not seeing that kind of situation, but you have to be careful. You just have to be careful. You should have seen the look on her face when I said that.
No, my heart skipped a beat for a while. So in terms of children, now children are a little bit more vulnerable than adults, right? So is there any cases reported in children, and if God forbid your child is infected, what should you do as a parent?
So I honestly cannot say if any of the 100 cases are in children. They did not do a breakdown of the profile to include the ages thus far. But we do recognize that children are actually pretty resilient. As much as we think children are vulnerable, we saw it with COVID, where adults were falling flat and children were running up and down fine, although we now have to consider another issue with children that I would speak about a little later today. But again, it's just the same thing with adults. With children, we just have to be conscious of the fact that if you see any little rash, definitely let us know. This rash it just came out of nowhere, and we need to be concerned about that.
In your opinion, where do you see this going? Like, do you see a situation where this is just going to be heat for now and we'll get it under control, or it would be a situation where we would have a larger outbreak and we'll be back at square one?
Well, I am hoping that we get this under control. The good thing about the last two years is that people are now more conscious about outbreaks. Before COVID, most people really did not care about different outbreaks all over the world. So this is an opportunity, because people are now more conscious about things, that we are able to see things better. We are able to pay more attention to when these things come up. So I think if these 100 cases, we are able to contain it. We are very vigilant. We ensure that we do not just let the little rash go and think it's a little thing, it's going away. We would be able to get over this, and it would not become a pandemic. I am hoping and praying that it is not a pandemic that we have to treat with.
I remember when I did an interview with Mr. Ricardo Bob the other day, and he's a health inspector. He said he was speaking on Mosquito Week, and one of the most important things that he said that stuck in my mind was the fact that he alluded to, we don't want a pandemic within a pandemic, because we are just getting over COVID. And as I mentioned it, I want to touch on it a little bit. Now, like I started off earlier saying, a lot of persons may forget sometimes that we are still, in a COVID-19. You wouldn't really say it a pandemic now, but we are still experiencing COVID-19. I mean, things are getting back slowly to the norm. But sometimes I wonder if we would ever go back to what is considered normal for us. However, with that being said, as it relates to COVID-19, do you see things getting better? Are people more aware of COVID-19 now that the situation has died a little bit? Like, are you disappointed with how persons are reacting or treating with COVID-19?
Well, we have to be conscious of the fact that being locked down for 2 years is a very difficult position to be in. We all want to be free. Listen, I hate wearing the stupid mask. I, Dr. Faith B. Israel's Secretary for Health, hate wearing the stupid mask. So I understand how people are responding, how people are reacting. What has happened over the last couple months, though, is that we've been blessed that the variant of COVID that we've been experiencing has been a variant that is milder than Delta. Remember, in November, December, every other day was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people were dying. We are not experiencing that, and I am thankful to all of the gods for that we have the variant now that is milder than that. And we are hoping that as we go along, as people actually develop resistance, as more people get vaccinated, but as people actually get sick and survive, they develop that kind of resistance that would allow the virus to fizzle out after a while. So no, I am not disappointed, because I understand human nature, and I understand that people need to feel free. I understand that people are in the middle of having economic and emotional and all sorts of things happening, and this is why people are responding the way they are. We just need to be conscious of the fact of, everyone use their individual responsibility, hold on to your individual responsibility, and do what you need to do. The numbers are going back up, though, if you realize, since we've opened back schools. There are some days you see the 13 and the 2 and the 3, but there are some days you see the 50 and the 60, and these are just the individual individuals who have officially been tested within our system. I know that if we are seeing 60 people, there are probably 100 other people who just did not get tested, who we don't know about, that are running around. And that is why we need to still encourage people to still be vigilant. We are not out of it just yet. We are still in that endemic phase, which is the phase where we have relatively high cases, but it's a consistently high number of cases. But we have to figure out how to balance life, how to balance economics, how to balance our education system with still being able to live with this virus.
Okay, so we touched on a lot of things, and very brief, do you have any last words that you want to, tell the persons who are listening, whether they are hearing or seeing us?
Certainly. As I've said with COVID all of the time, don't panic, because when we panic, then we don't think clearly. What we need are people who can think rationally and take clear steps. We've outlined what the symptoms are for monkeypox: the fever, the feeling tired, the rash. If you see those issues, if you know somebody with those issues, then call us. Let us know that that is what is happening, so that we can grab it quickly, so that we can take control of it quickly, so that we can prevent it from spreading. That is what we are asking you to do. Act. Don't be afraid. Don't panic, but act if you recognize that these things are happening, and just be careful out there.
Alright guys, you heard from Dr. Faith B. Israel, and she touched on the monkeypox and COVID-19, and she wanted to, bring assurance, bring that awareness to us, because we need to understand how serious things are getting, and we need to take the preventative measures to make sure we safeguard and protect the ones that are around us. Now, as I said earlier, the monkeypox have been identified in some countries. It have not yet been identified in Trinidad and Tobago. We are hoping that it stays there, because we are a very small nation, and sometimes things spread very fast. You see how it was when we had the COVID-19 virus, and we really and truly, things are getting back to normal, and we want to keep it balanced, as Dr. Faith said. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us on this rainy day.
I know. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad that Tobago Updates is really doing this kind of information session, because that is what we need. We need the information out there so that people can respond appropriately.
As I usually say, that's it and that's all. So we want to thank you for tuning in, for joining in. As always, as I say, always stay safe, keep smiling, make sure and have a wonderful, blessed day. Have a great day, guys, and an even better week ahead. We are, some days away from the long weekend and my birthday on Sunday. So have a great day, guys. Bye.
Let's go. It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawning. As the passion start to rise, the energy fill the sky.